Aaron Rodgers gets a new big target in New York with the Jets signing Mike Williams. We'll tell you why he increases the fantasy value for everyone around him. Plus, we discuss two of the most improved offenses heading into next season on today's episode of Locked On
You
Fantasy
are
Football.
Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk. When I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL, fantasy, and betting, which includes free agency and the draft for sportingnews.com. Check us out there.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So yesterday, after we discussed Mike Williams, he was supposed to visit 3 teams this week. His very first visit with the Jets. He doesn't even make it to the Panthers or Steelers. He signs with the Jets. I personally love this landing spot, and I think he has a ton of fantasy value left in him. What are your thoughts on Mike Williams just for his fantasy value? Let's start there first, Vinny.
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to start out with is he's getting a little older. He's approaching 30, and he's got an extensive injury history. The latest is now a knee that's a major issue, trying to come back from it. So we'll have to see how that progresses, and we're going to monitor that all off season long. And he's a guy, just the way he plays a little bit, he kind of goes up, takes some hits, goes down, takes some hits. He's a guy that leaves himself a little prone to injury to just his body type. So I'm a little bit going to proceed with caution here, right? I want to rank him somewhat high and be excited about him. And he was pretty good in fantasy last year before he got hurt, but he got hurt so quickly. He had one big year in fantasy a couple of years ago when he was scoring and doing a lot with a little volume there from Justin Herbert. So he has that potential. We know that. I mean, he was a first-round pick there for the Chargers. So I think it's a little bit wait and see. I also have to see what the Jets do in the draft. They apparently are starting to love these wide receivers, right? There was even a mock draft there on NFL.com that had the Jets going up and getting Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know if that changes here, right? I mean, Marvin Harrison is a different type of talent here. And look, the Jets need depth. So Garrett Wilson has some route versatility, so you can put some guys on the outside. They're not going to try to force in Al Lazard and Randall Cobb and some of these former Aaron Rodgers targets in here. They need someone else. And I think just watch out for that if they go after Malik Neighbors or Roma Dinze, if one of those drops to them, or they go after Harrison, like Daniel Jeremiah suggested there on NFL.com. So there's a lot of things to look at there with this offense. But yeah, you would say of all the landing spots that he was considering, we weren't thrilled about the other ones. This is the best for him because he gets Aaron Rodgers, he gets Wilson on the other side, Breece Hall to the backfield. You know, right now, for the moment, he's one of their top 3 targets if he can be healthy and on the field. But there's still a lot to develop here before we know how much we can trust Williams and where we want to rank him.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this, and I don't think the Jets will take a wide receiver now early. Maybe they'll go on to look for Brock Bowers now, right? They could still use a really great tight end there. I think that would be better for their offense right now. I know Mike Williams gets hurt a lot, right? But I do think he says he's on track to play for week 1 and be good to go coming off his ACL tear. Since 2021, he has averaged nearly 15 points per game. He's at 14.8. That's the same exact amount as Jalen Waddle. That's more than Amari Cooper, DJ Moore, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith. 2 more points per game than Brandon Ayuk. 4 more points per game than Courtland Sutton. And this is also counting the games that he got injured in or games he's played very limited snaps in, right? That it was just miserable games for him. So he is so talented when he's on the field. He averages 16.5 points per game in games that he played at least 30 plus snaps since 2021. Puts him right in the middle with AJ Brown and Mike Evans. I think he's going to be well worth his draft cost because he's not going to cost nearly the same amount as any
No,
of these
probably
guys
not.
I
Yeah.
just brought up. So I really like the situation where he's at. But I also like this for Garrett Wilson. I don't think this affects him all too much. I don't expect Mike Williams to get like a ton of targets in the air. Like Garrett Wilson will still get his 140 plus targets. He will be the wide receiver one. And this at least takes some pressure off of Garrett Wilson where it's not just him and no one else.
Yeah, this is a field stretcher as well, so that's good because again, he's going to take some deep shots there, Rodgers, with his big arm and stretch the field a little bit and make some defenses a little bit more honest, where they have to put a little bit of safety attention over the top there with the corners. So they just have to be a little bit wary because Garrett Wilson, I think he was a little bit compressed last year. He did produce as well as he could with the bad quarterback situation, but between the bad quarterbacks and not having another receiver, he faced a lot of tight coverage and didn't have a lot of room to operate. But such a good route runner, makes a lot of moves on the outside that he was able to still produce. So this gives them a little bit more room, and I would still like them to go after, again, a rookie receiver and make this like a true dynamic offense because you need multiple weapons here. And when we get to the offenses here that are the most improved from free agency, that's what they have, right? Is a lot of depth and versatility with their receiving core all of a sudden. And the Jets still need some of that. And so Mike Williams is a good start. They were fortunate that he was out there and they could go get him. They really weren't doing much else. They didn't have any interest in Calvin Ridley. So we got to see how this plays out. But look, field stretcher is going to help Garrett Wilson in one aspect, but I think it's also going to help Brees Hall see a little bit underneath routes as well.
Yeah, this should help Brees Hall a lot. Just have more space in the run game. I mean, his efficiency last year, it was poor, but I think we all know it's not because of Brees Hall, right? It's because the offense was so poor and defenses really just knew it was Garrett Wilson or Brees Hall. Those were their only two options. They didn't even have a quarterback to worry about. It was those only two guys you had to worry about. So it was so easy when just looking at like how many times he saw a light box. It was the third fewest among running backs with 200 plus carries last year. So this should definitely open up things. If Mike Williams is healthy, able to stay on the field, the way he stretches the field just also gives the defense another player to have to look out for. I do think this is going to make Brees Hall's life much easier as well. And right now on Fantasy Pros, Brees Hall is being projected to be the number 2 running back off the board in drafts, right behind Christian McCaffrey. I don't know if I'm all the way there with him, but these moves will help me get there. So it can't be just Mike Williams, right? But if they also added a Brock Bowers, then all of a sudden things were going to become much easier for Brees Hall and also give him more scoring opportunities.
Yeah, and we really didn't get a chance to see the offense, what it would look like with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. So finally, we might get a look at that. And we also saw a late signing by the Jets, taking a shot on Tyron Smith to see what he's got left here at left tackle. If he can give them anything outside, that's going to improve the blocking as well for all these guys and keep Rodgers upright, hopefully healthy this year, so he can take advantage of this. Because look, it was still very impressive that we had Wilson and Hall do what they did with that atrocious situation at quarterback. And they just try to get a little bit better in the backup space now with Tyrod Taylor. We'll see what they do with Zach Wilson, but at least I don't think there's going to be as big a drop off in Taylor. We know when he gets a shot, he's going to be solid, execute the offense, get the ball in the hands of the playmakers, and it helps, right? Taylor was with Williams in Los Angeles, so
true.
they have a little history together. If they need, and Taylor also has a very big arm. And that's one of his things that he's kind of lasted in the league for this long, bouncing around. He knows systems well, and he also has a big arm. So I don't think they're going to be in bad shape this year, nearly with Taylor there. If something were to happen to Rodgers, hopefully Rodgers will be on the field for all the games.
Yeah. Tyrod Taylor would have instantly been a massive upgrade to anything they had last year. So you're right there. We don't have to worry as much about the Aaron Rodgers and if he were to get injured, but it would be nice if they were able to all stay healthy together to see what this Jets offense could be. It'd be great for them to finally have a good offense. And we're going to talk about the 2 most improved offenses from this offseason going into next season. I mean, both of these teams could be very, very exciting, which they have not been as of late. So we'll get into that for the rest of our show. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit only available to the U.S. customers. So the number one most improved offense this offseason, it has to be the Atlanta Falcons, right? They added a
Yeah.
true, really above average quarterback in Kirk Cousins. I think he is a true, really good passer, good quarterback, has the right mentals there, and he's going to just improve this offense overall. Then they also added Darnell Mooney. That's a really solid addition, because last year was Drake London and no one else. So at wide receiver, they had Darnell Mooney. They still have Drake London. They still have Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson going into his second year. They got rid of Arthur Smith, and they have the number 8 overall pick. I mean, talk about an offseason that they can add another great wide receiver if they want to. But let's start here with the addition of Darnell Mooney and Kirk Cousins. Do you think Darnell Mooney is a good enough wide receiver too? Or do you think they should keep looking to add wide receivers here?
Well, they did add a couple more wide receivers. They don't move the needle as much, but they did trade Desmond Ritter, which was a good little move there to get Rondo Moore. And don't forget
Sure.
about Ray McLeod. He also comes over. He's probably going to have his impact in the return game. And they actually did re-sign Kaderil Hodge. I didn't think they were going to do that. So Rondo Moore right now would project to be their slot. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, we said they're going to pivot heavily from that 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, to this 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers being their base set. I mean, that's what the Rams do. That's what Zach Robinson is going to do. So that's a big shift here, right? And I think what it does is it creates more space. You're not kind of just catering to a run-heavy offense here. It's going to spread the field a little bit, and that's what we've seen with the Rams offense. They're really good, right, at getting guys open, scheming them open, working guys from the outside to the inside, vice versa. So that alone, just having Zach Robinson in there to kind of move these chess pieces around, I mean, that's great. I mean, Darnell Mooney is a pretty good deep threat. And again, he has a potential in the slot, but I think he would be better on the outside. I think him and Drake London are a really good match together. It was a really astute signing here by the Falcons. Where like, okay, has been productive, right? When he's had decent quarterback play early in his career, but he was hurt and he couldn't stay on the field. I thought he was one of the more underrated signings. So guy has some speed. He can stretch the field a little bit. Drake London can do that as well. So you have 2 guys on the outside you trust. We'll see what they do between Moore and Hodge in the middle there to help. And then you look at Kyle Pitts. He's also versatile. And then I think not having that extra tight end is going to help. He's not going to get production pilfered by a Jonnu Smith this year. It's just not going to happen. So when you consider all that, yeah, this is a great offense. And don't forget, Bijan, very good in the passing game. So this really, he's an extra kind of receiver that you put out there. Like you look at him as a dominant runner. So I think the one odd guy out, and we're fine with it this year, is Tyler Algier. I think you're going to see this team throw the ball a lot more at maybe a 60% clip. Robinson's going to be fine with that. When they need to run it and give it to him in high leverage situations, he's going to be fine with that. So I'm really excited to see what this Falcons offense can do. And let's not forget, their offensive line is still pretty good. Like they have Chris Lidstrom and Caleb McGarry and Jake Matthews. There's some really good guys up front that are going to keep Kirk Cousins protected and get the ball downfield. So I'm really excited to see what this Falcons offense can do. And really just based on this offense alone, I think they have to be the favorite now in the NFC South.
I am super intrigued though. If they're sitting there at number 8 and Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors is sitting there, do they go that route? Because I don't think Darnell Mooney or Rondell Moore stops you from taking these guys, right? Darnell Mooney has had 1 year over 600 yards. Like He reminds me of like a KJ Osborne. I think they're good wide receivers, good wide receiver threes, maybe. I don't know. Like Darnell Mooney can handle it as wide receiver too, but doesn't excite me. The good thing though is that they do have the Kyle Pitts there, so it's not like they're lacking at tight end. They do have a talented pass catcher in Kyle Pitts. Will they finally use him? Can he catch those passes? We'll see. But I think this is the thing with Kyle Pitts. He's been utilized in this offense. 90 targets last year. He should have more than that, but Jonnu Smith took some away. He should end up getting more than that. His catch percentage has been so incredibly low for his career. 57.5 catch percentage for a tight end is out of this world. I mean, it should be near 75%, near 80% for a tight end, right? At least it needs to be in the 70s, and it's at 57.5. I don't want to put that on just Kyle Pitts. Maybe somewhat his fault, but he's been playing with the worst quarterback. So if that can just increase, we're already going to see a huge increase in value for fantasy points. And then also touchdowns, right? He has 6 touchdowns over his 3 careers. Kirk Cousins is going to throw touchdowns this year, unlike Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke and Marcus Mariota, right? So I think already we're going to see an increase with Kyle Pitts. But then let's discuss here, like, where are we taking Pitts in terms of other guys? Would you rather have a David Njoku this year or a Kyle Pitts?
I think if I would say similar offenses that you spread the ball a little bit, I'm going to say I want Kyle Pitts, because you look at one thing now beyond what we've seen with the quarterback issues. What did Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder do a lot? They took off and ran and took up some garbage points, right? Kirk Cousins is not going to do that. He's not going to make up yards that way. And keep in mind, this Arthur Smith era began with the end of the Matt Ryan career, right? His arm was noodle. He could not push the ball downfield at that point. Kirk Cousins was flinging it last year, and he didn't hurt his arm. He hurt his Achilles. So if he comes back there strong, you would expect him to have that cannon, and he's going to fire the ball downfield. So that's why I think it upgrades all these guys. I mean, I don't think even Mooney has played with this type of quarterback. I mean, Andy Dalton gave him his best production there in Chicago for a very short time. So you just have a big arm quarterback. He's not going to run. So that opens up yards that are going to be for the taking. He's going to sit in the pocket, extend plays, or he's going to dump down to Kyle Pitts or Bijan Robinson, right? That's how they're going to get it versus running the ball with their quarterback. So that's a little bit of an underrated aspect here, that this is going to be more of a pocket passing team. And that's going to help all the pass catchers, right? When you don't have that quarterback trying to just, oh, no, here comes pressure, I'm taking off and running. That's not going to happen. Kirk Cousins is going to sit there in the pocket, try to extend plays. We know he's really good off play action as well. So this is really good. Where I think, again, pass happier offense. It doesn't take away Bijan's strength. You get all the other weapons involved. So it's really exciting. And again, Kyle Pitts is probably a middle of the pack tight end one, just because there's so many really good ones that I would trust a little bit more than him. But that's how I'm looking at Kyle Pitts right now. But I think you bump up Drake London to probably wide receiver 2. I think you look at Darnell Mooney as a wide receiver 3 sleeper. And then Kirk Cousins, I think he's a top 12 quarterback. I mean, if he's out on the field producing and throwing a lot, I'm going to trust Kirk Cousins. Again, he's just that good in terms of pushing the ball downfield. And again, this pass run percentage should be really leaning pass, where it's going to do a 180 from what we've seen in the last 3 years.
It is wild just looking at Bijan Robinson. So he was such a disappointment last year, but he puts up 1,463 scrimmage yards, 8 scrimmage touchdowns in his rookie season, with splitting a backfield with another guy, Tyler Algier. And that was a miserable season for him, right? For fantasy, because we expected so much more. I don't know how much more we could have expected. That's a really amazing rookie season. And so right now he's being projected to be the 3rd running back off draft boards. Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, then Bijan Robinson. I actually think Bijan should be the 2nd. I think I'd rather Bijan Robinson than Breece Hall as of this moment.
More just talent too, I would say.
Looking overall at that floor of 1463 and 8 on a miserable offense with a miserable OC, with splitting way too much of the touches with Tyler Algier, like, so many of those things should change up, and also just the offense in general should be much more efficient. He's my 2nd guy off the board after CMC.
Yeah, we also look at vacated targets quite a bit, but one thing we don't think about is there's point and yard potential, right? This team just could simply score and move the ball a lot more, giving more opportunities for all these guys to produce as well. So, and if you're moving the ball and passing it downfield. You're going to be in the red zone more opportunities for touchdowns. So all those things really line up well for Bijan Robinson. Again, also the South is a division that you can kind of pick apart here still, I think, overall. So a lot of good stuff to like about the Falcons. We'll get into our second most improved offense in fantasy. That's the Chicago Bears in our final segment. Tomorrow we'll take a look at three more teams that have improved themselves as well. So stay tuned for that as our version of madness continues here. All right, I talked about madness, and it's coming. It's coming. Tomorrow, the real tournament begins here with the first round game. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament, whether you're betting on a big upset in the first round or second round and looking at a number one seed to take care of business. It's time to go dancing on America's number one sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's right. $200 to use on your point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win it all right now. Futures there for Phoenix in the Final Four. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. You got a lot of games to pick from all the way through. So a lot of fun. Check it out. FanDuel, the number one sports book in America. Your home here for March Madness. All right, Michelle, let us talk about the Chicago Bears. Now, we have to see. They have more variable at quarterback because Caleb Williams is sitting there. In fact, as we're talking about this, he's about to work out in his pro day, so the Bears will see what they're getting. Let's go quickly run down what they got here. They traded for Keenan Allen. They also signed his teammate from the Chargers, Gerald Everett, to back up Cole Kmet. They lost Mooney. We know that, but they were expected to do that. DJ Moore still there. DeAndre Swift is your new running back here. Still have Khalil Herbert and Roshan Johnson behind him. So now we have to see. The big question is, what do the Bears do with that number 9 pick? We know number 1 is going to be Caleb Williams. Are they going to go after wide receiver? Would they look somewhere else to help their offense, maybe on the line? But what do you think, Michelle? I mean, are you buying the Bears being just a lot more viable this season?
They should. They should look much better. If Caleb Williams is what people expect, even slightly, right? If he doesn't come in and bomb like a Bryce Young or something like that, and Bryce Young didn't have these weapons, so I don't want to put that all on him. But there is really no reason for Caleb Williams to come in here and not look capable, and not have a really solid rookie season with these weapons. As long as Keenan Allen and DJ Moore are staying healthy, they still have Cole Kmet. DeAndre Swift will help out as well along with the other running backs. Like, too many good weapons here and veteran weapons as well to help out Caleb Williams in his rookie season. This offense should be one of the best in the NFC. It really should be right off the bat. So I'm excited to see this. Now, when it comes to fantasy, I'm a little bit worried that they all hurt each other, especially at the wide receiver position here with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. I will say, I think I prefer DJ Moore a bit more because he doesn't need as many targets as Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has been that target hog, and he gets his fantasy points from just getting like 13 targets a game, right? Like 10 receptions a game. DJ Moore can make more happen with fewer targets. He can break a really long touchdown. We know he can do what he can do after the catch. I mean, 136 targets this past year. He did have the highest catch percentage of his career at 70%. So he was really clicked with Justin Fields. So it kind of stinks we don't get to see that any longer. But he's that guy that he's just so good after the catch that he doesn't need 10 targets a game. I'm going to go with DJ Moore over Keenan Allen. Do you agree with that if you were looking at both of them in a fantasy draft?
Yeah, DJ Moore, I think this helps DJ Moore more than anything else. I don't think it actually helps Keenan Allen, this transition, because, again, he's getting older. He's breaking down a little bit. I don't think he's got too much left, but he could be like an Adam Thielen type, except that Thielen was really good at scoring touchdowns, and that's been his thing throughout his career. Keenan Allen doesn't score a lot, so he has to get that massive volume, and I'm not sure he's going to get as much here. I'm not sure that you're going to see Shane Waldron try to recreate what they had with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. First of all, Tyler Lockett is a different type of receiver. He's smaller, shiftier, and faster at this stage of their careers, getting older, than Keenan Allen is. So DJ Moore should be the alpha. He commands the ball. They want to get it to him all over the field. we also want to see how things develop in the offseason program, who the chemistry is developing between here with the Caleb Williams. I would guess it's DJ Moore because he's a little bit more of an alpha type. I think Keenan Allen's going to be more like, put my head down, I'll get open if my quarterback needs to be there. Now, what also hurts Keenan Allen is now you have two viable tight ends. So Waldron, as we know, used a bunch of tight ends, including Will Dissly and Noah Fant and Colby Parkinson. He would get all these dudes in there for the Seahawks. So they're going to use a good share of 12, sometimes with two tight ends on the field. Keenan Allen primarily lines up in the slot. So we'll see how that plays out. But you're right. There's a bit of a void for that third receiver, right? They have some options in-house, but no. I mean, if they're sitting on a very good wide receiver talent, say Odunze or Neighbors slips them at number 9, they're going to have to think about it because offensive tackle could also come to play. They could also think about defense there for Matt Eberflus here in that selection. So there's a lot of things they could really consider. But again, I want to see how it all comes together, right? With the Falcons, the puzzle pieces are almost there, right? A wide receiver at this point would be a luxury pick. Wide receiver might be more necessity for the Bears, and we're not sure what we're going to get from Caleb Williams. And that transitions to also, what are we going to get from DeAndre Swift? Do you trust him? It's another guy that has a lot of injury issues and a bit up and down in his career.
I think I do. I think this offense will be in enough scoring opportunities. Last year, how many times was he taken down at like the 1 yard line? And you're like, well, Jalen Hurts is going to steal it. I mean, that happens so much. He should have had a much better fantasy year because just over 1,000 rushing yards, wasn't used heavily in the receiving game. So he's never going to be like this elite fantasy option, but he looked good anytime they gave him the ball a lot of times on the ground in a game. It's just he only had 5 rushing touchdowns because anytime they got around the goal line, it didn't go to Swift. It went just straight to Jalen Hurts. And in this offense, I don't think that's going to happen, right? Unless they start to use Caleb Williams tush push nonstop. But Swift should have more opportunities to score rushing touchdowns. I like him better in this situation than I did with the Eagles situation. And hopefully Caleb Williams will use him more as a receiver as well. So I'm willing to take the bet on DeAndre Swift having a better year than he did last year. And last year was a solid enough year for fantasy where I think he's going to be a pretty good value in drafts this year.
Yeah, I really want him involved in the pass game. That's where his value is going to come in half and full point PPR because right now, if they don't get that next receiver, right, he could be right there in targets with Moore and Allen ahead of the tight ends with Kmet and Everett probably splitting that work at this point. So when you look at that, I mean, DeAndre Swift can get a potential to have 50 to 60 catches. Then you're in business here with him because that's his strength. And we know that from Detroit. And I don't know if we see any of these teams really trusting him as a goal line back either. I think there's a sense that he's a bit slight. That's why we had that situation develop in Detroit where Jamal Williams went nuts scoring touchdowns and DeAndre Swift was kind of everywhere else on the field, catching passes and settling for what he could get with long runs. So I'm not sure teams totally trust him in that. We'll see if they like Roshan Johnson or Khalil Herbert more than that. And keep in mind, Williams is a very good athlete. He's maybe not Justin Fields or Jalen Hurts, but he's a very good athlete that has scored a lot of rushing touchdowns as well. He makes a lot of plays with his feet from USC and Oklahoma. So when we look at that, yeah, so I'm going to be reserved a little bit. I think the two things that need to happen, volume overall in the running game and volume overall in the passing game. Those are the two key things that have to develop for Swift because if you're trying to get him to score enough for you, it's going to be tricky, especially if they kind of maintain that committee that they have with Herbert and Johnson behind him because Johnson's a big back too. Keep that in mind that they could plow him in there. Herbert has had some experience scoring. So those are my only concerns. I would say if I had to go though, like to say overall, if I wanted to invest in DeAndre Swift or Keenan Allen, I think I would go more DeAndre Swift, right? Going forward. I'm not going to go chase Keenan Allen, the Charger, but I feel better about DeAndre Swift upside as a Bear.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It will be interesting to see what they do with that backfield. Do they keep Khalil Herbert back there? I would feel better if they moved on from him, but I still think they paid Swift. He's going to be their lead back. Now, one last question here to finish up the Bears. Caleb Williams, right? We fully expect him to be the number 1 overall pick. He has all these weapons. Now, with the draft for 2024, just redraft normal fantasy league, Would you rather, so I have a question for you. Would you rather have Caleb Williams or Kirk Cousins, who we just talked about in our last segment, where Kirk Cousins, he's going to be probably around quarterback 9-10, right? Caleb Williams could be way worse than that or way better. Which would you rather go with, the upside or the safety?
Well, that actually might be stop giving away this stuff. This actually might be the combination of quarterbacks I draft, right? In a lot of
Okay.
leagues where I'm getting Kirk Cousins first and then I'm stashing the upside of Caleb Williams later. I love that combination if you're playing super flex or 2 quarterback leagues. If you got that combo, get the Kirk Cousins, maybe get running back and wide receiver, something in between, come back to Williams or get Williams in the 3rd round, something like that, right? That's what I really like. But that's what I tend to do in a lot of drafts. Like, have one solid guy, I wait, get that 8 to 12 type quarterback where I know he's got a nice floor. And I think Kirk Cousins has a floor, assuming he's healthy and he comes back from that Achilles. And then Williams is the upside guy. So it's always good. Like, if you did that last year, you might have had, I don't know, you'd maybe stash CJ Stroud, but then you took Aaron Rodgers and then it worked out, right? If Rodgers went down, he was kind of the floor guy that you thought, but you took a ceiling guy just in case. And I've done this before. I had Andrew Luck one year. That was the year that I had Patrick Mahomes too, and Andrew Luck was on my bench for most of the year. So that is a good kind of approach to go with, I think. So floor versus ceiling. I think Caleb Williams is the higher ceiling because of the running, but the higher floor that I can trust a little bit more and is established in taking like 8 to 10. That's where I would target Cousins. Where I think Williams, I wouldn't go too far, right? I would say 14 or 15. Even that is legitimate to think about, depending on what we see with the other quarterbacks.
So I do think Caleb Williams is going to end up getting a lot of hype this offseason and be drafted relatively higher than what we would like, probably because of the Justin Herbert succeeding right away, and because Stroud season last year, because Patrick Mahomes, his first year just broke out, and Caleb Williams is being, compared to him with his skill set. So I don't know if we're going to be able to go that route, but it would be great. But I have a feeling I'm going to talk myself into Caleb Williams this year. So you're going to have to keep me grounded, right? Don't let me get too high on him.
Dash
But
him
we have
nicely, but don't go overpay for him.
we have a whole off season to worry about how high we get on these rookies. It's going to be a fun time. That is it for today's show. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Everydayers, Vinnie and I will be back tomorrow with another fun episode. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.